Steve, I would say you're dressed for the occasion, but you're always dressed for the occasion. Like at
The
least for
podcast.
yeah, but it's our Halloween show, and you're giving orange
Oh,
and
I'm doing double
pumpkin.
duty. That's great. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
It's your 1 week a year where it works out
That's what
really
I was
well for
thinking.
you. That's
Yep.
exactly what it is. Um, this is the Stuff Summary Says podcast with
Steve.
Steve. Yeah, no, happy Halloween week if you're listening to this week. We've got a lot to talk about. Like there's something else that I think we forgot to put on our rundown that just hit me that I'm gonna write into my phone so that we don't forget it because I do think we need to talk about it. There's that. There's also a great interview with John Sauber this week, the CDT beat writer for Penn State football, Penn State basketball. Just a really solid conversation. My first conversation with him, and one that I really enjoy. He seems like a very solid dude. And we get into kind of one of the issues or things that we probably should include in that list of rundowns to talk about this week. So go ahead, listen to that. And we'll be back after that interview. Steve, think this is the first time we've had. I think this is the first time we've had John on. Yeah, it is the first time we've
Yeah,
had
we're
John on.
overdue. Yeah, yeah.
And we owe him an apology because yes, we are overdue, and I apologize, John. So I'm glad you're here. Our guest this week, CDT Penn State beat writer, John Sauber. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me on. There's no need to apologize. It is nice to be here, and I'm glad to sit down and talk with you guys.
It's in our defense. It's a bigger beat, I think, and we're gonna use that.
He just said there's no need to apologize, and you're going to keep going?
Excuse. Yes, I am.
Listen,
I
there's
am.
like 45 of us to choose from to have on at any given time. So.
Yes, and yeah. Anyways, John, I guess we're gonna start with our customary question, if you will, of what is your career path? How did you end up in Happy Valley? Because you didn't necessarily have the traditional Penn State beat writer path, if you will.
Yeah, I actually wasn't a journalism major at all at first. I was an econ major. Uh, Basically, my junior year at Penn State, where I was a student, decided to switch to journalism and ran a speed run through the journalism program in 2 years. 84 credits in 2 years was not a lot of fun. 21 a semester was not a lot of fun, but yeah, it was a heavy workload. Basically, didn't have any collegiate experience or anything like that, so I decided I wanted to do grad school. Went out to IUPUI in Indianapolis, where I learned a lot from Malcolm Moran, who used to be at Penn State and everything. A lot of people around here very familiar with him, but yeah, the experience out there was invaluable. I was covering the national title game as like the fourth sporting event I had ever covered, which was mortifying on some level. I give a lot of credit to Matt Fortuna, who is doing his own thing on, I believe, Substack right now. But he was the one who kind of guided me. That national title game. It was, as an Eagles fan, I really appreciate this now, but it was Devontae Smith catching a game-winning touchdown from Tua Tagovailoa. Like the play was coming at me too. It was a wild experience. But after college, I went to work for Rivals, where I covered Indiana University men's basketball and recruiting, which was a lot. Did that for about 10 months before I came back. Now I'm at the CDT, where I've been for the last 6 years now. As we were discussing pre-pod, I did not realize I'd been here that long, and it is alarming to see that happen that quickly.
As we were joking, time has really started to fly. I guess I think your podcast co-host also made kind of a degree switch or a career switch, if you will. What made you kind of say, I think I want to go down this journalism path, even though you were getting an econ degree to start?
Yeah, so the plan was always to go to law school, and I just got bored, for lack of a better way to phrase it, right? Like I always wanted to be in sports somehow. A lot of times, people get into journalism because they want to be journalists, right? And I think that is probably the uh, maybe not necessarily the better path, but one that leads you to be like that capital J journalist more often than not. Me is I just wanted to be involved in sports. I was going to try and be an agent had I been a lawyer. But this was the better, more enjoyable path, I thought, right? Like I love X's and O's. I think a lot of people on the beat will tell you that I'm a bit of a dork with that stuff. I watch way too much all 22. Every game, every Sunday, it's like my ritual at this point. Sunday morning when I wake up, even if I'm, flying that day, it's one of the first things I do after a Penn State game just to try and digest all of it. But yeah, I just love sports. Always have. It's been a major part of my life. Regrettably, with Philadelphia sports do it sometimes, but it's a lot of fun, and I'm always grateful that I made that kind of spur of the moment decision to make that change.
I feel like there's a lot of Philadelphia sad souls on the beat, so at least you have
There
friends to
are.
commiserate with. Were
Yes.
were you a writer before that? Like, were you like, let's like, you just wanted to kind of go into it?
Yeah, it's I'm I like to think I've always been creative on some level, and as you will learn on this podcast, I don't really shut up either. So that it comes out in the written word and typing a lot easier too, and it makes my work life more efficient because I write quickly, I type quickly. But no, I had never really considered writing. It was kind of an out of the blue thing that I kind of took a chance on myself on, and learning some of the stylistic stuff with journalism was, like I said, that speed run, that was the hard part, right? Because you get used to, sort of essay writing when you're in college and you're in high school and everything when you're young, and to try and change how you write and then to kind of find your voice too is a difficult thing. And it's been, like I said, it's been fun, but it's all been new, right? Never, I say new, this happened like 9 years ago now, but it's still like relatively new to me compared to I think where most people are at in my career.
With the Penn State beat being so big and there are so many people on it, like how do you work to differentiate yourself, or what is the niche you've tried to find in terms of serving your readers and keeping yourself interested?
Yeah, so a lot of that is the reporting, I think, for me, right? Like I broke the Mike Yurcich news last year. I've had a bunch of the assistant coach hirings and firings over the last few years, and there's I think a lot of journalists will tell you that's the kind of competitive aspect you get. For any of us who like played high school sports, you still get some of that adrenaline rush, if you will, there. But from the the writing standpoint, I've tried to really differentiate with my analysis. I am, like I said, with the all 22 stuff, I'm very analytical in that regard. Like I'm trying to find out the why on a lot of things more so than the how or the what happened, right? Like I want to know thoughts behind, okay, why did why was Julian Fleming running this crossing route here instead of running a dig, right? Like why is a lot of, or a deep cross instead of a dig, or stuff like that, right? Like it's that informative aspect that I really like. And there's a special balance though between that where you're too coach speaky, and you're not really coming through, and you're trying to dumb it down is not fair because our readers obviously aren't dumb or anything, but you're simplifying in a way that someone who isn't wasting their time like I am, so they can understand it, right? So they can try and get the feel of why these things happen. So I think a lot of the analysis stuff, and honestly, I'm very proud of my game day coverage, especially the post game stuff, and digging into the grand scheme of it all, right? Like the big picture, like what does this mean for the whole thing, that what Penn State's actually chasing or what Penn State's trying to really do. So those are the two main things for me, I think. And I like to think I've done a good job, but I always say that the readers and the followers and the listeners will be the judge of that in the end.
So then do you look at that stuff too? Like, do you dig into analytics, or do you have access to story reads and time on story or whatever it is that then determines, I don't know, if it affects what you do at all and how so?
Yeah, so we have access to all of that. The goal is never like I at the end of the day, the journalism is going to lead me where it leads me, right? Like the that part of the job is always going to be the most important. But I think when you're trying to do these a weekly feature or something, right? Like a story you want to do at every certain period of time, you find out pretty quickly if readers like it, or if they're it's resonating with them, or if it doesn't. Sometimes that leads to scrapping of plans and stuff like that, and you always have to be able to kind of think on your feet in that regard. But there's some stuff that at the end of the day, the journalism is the most important thing, right? You got to be unflinching with some aspects of things that whether it's getting reads or whatnot, it's important to do that part of the journalism too. But yeah, there's no doubt that at the end of the day, that is it helps us kind of find out what our readers want, what they're looking for. Maybe if it's not even the same story, maybe it's a similar type of story. It's like, okay, how can I recreate this the next game with my analysis, whether that's pregame or postgame?
Gotcha, thanks.
What has helped you grow the most in this career?
The people around me, without a shadow of a doubt. You mentioned it's a big beat, but it's a very welcoming beat. A lot of my best friends are on the beat now. We're all very competitive, but nobody is stepping on someone else to help themselves out, right? It is. I've been raised up by my peers in a big way. A lot of credit to my editor, Josh Moyer, who was entirely my editor, and now he edits me partially on game days, and my executive editor too, Jess McAllister. Like they have really elevated me from a technical standpoint, from a writing standpoint. But I don't think there's anything on a big beat like this more important than feeling welcome, feeling like you're in the right place. And I think this beat does an excellent job of that, right? Whether it's traditional beat writers or recruiting sites. Like I feel like I have friends across the board, and it's really, it was pretty surprising when I first got here because being a Philly sports fan, you can see how that gets cutthroat. Those
Yeah.
beats are not the same, but this was, yeah, I've been lifted up in a major way by my colleagues.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. I think that comes through if you pay attention to the beat, and I think I appreciate that. I think going back to one of the things you did say, well, I think most people, your arrival, if you will, on the beat was breaking the Mike Yursich story, without maybe giving too much away. How did you kind of uncover that story?
So I was very stressed that day, right? Like I kind of had an inkling, I'll say the night before that something may be happening. Didn't know for certain because I don't think final decisions had been made. And I was, first tipped off about that Sunday morning. And, or the listeners of Audrey and I's podcast will know this. I play a lot of video games and like I watch a lot of football on Sundays, right? Like I'm not doing a ton else. And I was sitting, it was I think it was like 11:30 and I was sitting playing games with my friends and I see a text and it's like, you gotta be kidding me. Like and like immediately had to go take care of this. Spent some time trying to work to confirm it because it is a delicate situation, right? It's not, I mean, most things aren't things you're going with one source on. This is absolutely not one of those things. And so I spent a lot of time working on that, but yeah, it was, I honestly, it's from just having built the connections and someone was willing to alert me on it, right? Like willing to give me a heads up about that, and then going from there. But yeah, it was a very stressful day. It was not necessarily entirely fun until it was like kind of done and over with.
That's fair. It's funny you talk about the aspect because I remember touching in with Audrey after checking in with Audrey after that, and she had tweeted something that morning, and I was like, Audrey, now that I look at this tweet, it's a funny tweet to me, and it like I at the moment I thought it was interesting. So, but it's interesting to hear that. How do you go about developing those relationships? What's been your key to developing that relationship so that you get that text message when something big happens?
Yeah, so it's tough at a place like Penn State where we don't always have access to people in ways that you would like covering an NFL team or and even Penn State football is different in that regard. Like you can talk to people around like the men's basketball program and other programs and you just have opportunities to see people and see them in the community at different events or what have you. With football it's different, right? Like you just kind of have to be present and you have to be willing to have conversations with people and just I always used to joke that people just like to tell me things and I don't really know why. That still feels like somewhat true, right? Like you build trust and that's a major part of this. And the other massive part of it too is like making sure you're showing that you're not willing to compromise your integrity either. Like for all of the stuff that I've had, I think everyone that has ever spoken to me and helped me, break news, they all know that it's not going to impact how I cover them or their, you know what I mean, and their involvement in anything. And that's a big part is I think that kind of having that integrity and allowing people to see that because it shows one that you're not willing to compromise on your morals, which includes when something's off the record, it stays off the record, right? Like you can't flinch on those kind of things either. And so I think establishing that kind of rapport with people and just like I said, it's really about being present and just being around and being willing to introduce yourself to people, willing to talk to people is such a massive part of that. It's funny, I get that question all the time, right? And sometimes you don't really know how to answer it because it is somewhat luck too. Like it's just people liking you, right? And liking those conversations, enjoying speaking to you, and sometimes it's just right place, right time too, right? There's not always a rhyme or reason, but I think the main thing is that presence.
So last week there was maybe not right place, right time, and maybe people who didn't want it to speak to you, right? So it fell after we recorded last week with the James Franklin comments on the lawsuits coming out. Could let me go this way because you mentioned it first. What was the rest of the beat like with you afterward? Right, it's a very supportive, very what else, and from the outside that looks like they're trampling over my stuff. I'm trying to get stuff, and we're here. What was that part of it like first before we get into some other stuff? Like what was that response from like other beat members like and that kind of thing?
There's a lot of support, right? Like it was they understood the reasoning for why the questions had to be asked, why things kind of went the way they went. I don't think anyone, if they had disdain for me asking any questions I asked, like they didn't show it, they didn't say it. It was like I said, mostly that support. And I think the other thing that I think there was a lot of conversation about, I'm sure beat writers will be mad that they couldn't ask questions because James Franklin cut the press conference short. That kind of wasn't my read of the reasoning that it ended, right? There was a long pause between a lot of questions, and I think there was on some level a lack of feeling to ask questions because the situation is and was a serious one, and they people didn't kind of want to divert from that path, if you will, right? Like that, if these important questions aren't getting answered, it's like, well, then how can you ask about the other stuff that? Listen, we all love football. We all love the sport. Fans want to talk about it, but at the end of the day, like some things have to take precedence sometimes, and I think this was one of those situations.
So
From this stuff, go ahead, Darren.
I just want to like give you your opportunity to answer this, because I think the question of the week is, why are they even asking that? Why is the media even asking that? I have my opinion on why you asked it, but I want to hear kind of, why did you ask it? Like, what? And I don't mean that in a derogatory, negative
No,
way. I think give you your moment to explain why to people why you asked that.
yeah, and I think it's a lot of it is holding people in power accountable, right? And that's not even to say that anyone in this situation did anything wrong. It is about part of journalism is holding people in power accountable. And another part is making sure that everyone has a chance to respond to things, right? Like you never publish a story that is one-sided. You always give both sides or all sides equal opportunity to respond, right? Our job is to not litigate who's right and who's wrong. It's just to put out there the facts. And in this situation, James Franklin is the head coach of the program, one of the most powerful people at the university in the state, right? Like I think like
Right.
he's a massive amount of power, and it is his program at the end of the day, and I thought it was worth asking. And I think everyone has seen the video. I never even got to the question in that part of it, but I thought it was worth asking, the about the facts of what had happened here. The question that never got that I never got out was, when was he first alerted to the allegations? That was what I was planning on asking. And I think that's important, right? Like to know when people are kind of you're piecing together a timeline of when things happened, so we have that on the record of how this all unfolded. And I've seen all of the criticism. It's coming from all sides, seemingly, right? Like when you go on social media, it can be a pretty vicious place at times too. But at the end of the day, like it's the job, and it comes with the territory. And I think it's important to not only give him a chance to respond, but to try and piece together what we know about this situation. And there will be a legal aspect that plays out, and James is allowed to answer that question however he wants to. And there was a lot of vitriol for how he handled it. It's not my place to judge how he handled it, right? Like I said, really wish some of the backlash wouldn't have come my way. That was obviously not an enjoyable thing. But he's allowed to handle it however he wants to handle it. And it's our job to put it out there, and it's his job to handle it and however he chooses. So
You might kind of answer my question about like it's his job to answer it, and I think it is his job. I think he's the face of the place, right? I think if you recruit the kids and then the kids leave, like you're the person who gets asked. It's not the president. It's not somebody else. It's you, right? But as it was happening, and forget the backlash because I'm not forget it. I'm sorry for you, but just seeing it from afar. But as it's playing out, was there anything that surprised you about what happened? Like, did you expect to get like the nonsensical, "Hey, see the statement, I can't say anything" answer, as opposed to the move from the microphone, which was probably what's biting any of his critics in the backside more than anything else?
yeah, I think that just kind of surprised me that he kind of I thought he would just either answer the question or reread the statement and defer if he couldn't answer the question. I thought those were the two most likely outcomes. You never know what's going to happen in a situation like that, which is part of why you ask the question. But yeah, I think the walking away from the microphone was probably the most surprising thing, because it's just generally not how he's handled difficult situations in the past, right? Whether he defers to an SID or he reads a statement, he kind of stays there and answers. This was the first time I've seen something like that happen. It definitely caught me off guard.
Were you surprised, or what was your reaction to his apology then after the game on Saturday?
I just, I appreciated that he was willing to take ownership of a mistake, right? And I think that's all that is. I think, as he said, he's human and he's learning and growing like everyone else is. We think we're all always learning and growing. I think he regretted how he handled it, and I appreciated that human aspect, right? I didn't need an apology or anything. I don't think right? This is not about us. It was never about, it's not about the media. I've seen a lot of the criticisms that this was a coordinated effort to draw views to a podcast. And I think anyone that knows me knows that I would much rather hide in my basement than be
Well, if that shit
receive any
works, let us
attention.
know. Darian and I come up with something for ourselves. Hey,
But no, I would rather receive no attention at all times, right? Like this, that is honestly my least favorite part of the job, is like being that present. Everyone can tell by how infrequently that I tweet outside of game days that I just like, I'd rather not, be in those areas, of the internet if I can. And so, yeah, it was, I don't know. It was I've already forgotten the original question that you asked, but it was it was alarming to see it go the way that it did, right? Like it was surprising that that happened, but to see him apologize and to do it quickly, I think was important. And I'm glad that everyone can kind of move forward. There was something very serious that happened here. That's, I think, what some people have kind of lost in this. This is not about the media. It's not about anything like that. It became a referendum on how we do our jobs, but I think the most important part is the legal case, and what may or may not have happened, and how people move forward in those situations, right? Like we have, we're doing our part and reporting and everything that goes with that. As you guys said, I work for the Center Daily Times. We're a newspaper that reports on these things. This is not just a Penn State football outlet. We have to move forward. We'll move forward covering anything that happens with the criminal aspect of it. But yeah, I appreciated that apology. To get back to what you did originally ask, and I I don't know that I'm glad that he saw it as necessary. Uh, Whoever the apology was directed at, I think obviously on some level he was apologizing to a lot of people for how he handled it, but I think for any error he made Wednesday, I think he recovered very well on Saturday, and like I said, hopefully people could just move on and out of my Twitter mentions, ideally.
There you go. I will give you an opportunity to talk about your coordinated effort with your podcast with Audrey, though. How did the podcast come about? Because I feel like it's maybe the first, and I don't want to like be quoted on this, but I feel like it's the first kind of interbeat writer podcast on the Penn State beat, and I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, so Audrey approached me about doing the podcast last, oh, I want to say it was last September. I think our first episode was before the whiteout, and we were kind of getting everything together. She was approached by our producer, who I don't know if he so he wants his name out there, not for any nefarious reasons, but just because we've all seen a lot of backlash recently. But she was approached by our producer to do a Penn State podcast, and she approached me, and I got the go ahead from the higher ups at the CDT and at McClatchy, which we're owned by, and it was kind of full steam ahead there, right? Audrey and I, we are friends. Like a lot of the beat writers are friends. I don't think that will surprise anyone, and so I really enjoy it. Like I think it's a lot of fun. I think the most uncomfortable aspect for me is frankly what I'm doing right now, and what I was trying to avoid for a lot of times. That's like putting myself out there, like my face out there, as like a um any sort of like I am in the spotlight kind of thing is always I've been averse to those things, but I've gotten more and more comfortable doing it. A lot of men's basketball fans have seen that I've done a podcast with Tim Frazier too for the last 2 years. That I don't believe we're doing that anymore, but that was kind of I dipped my toes into the water with that, and then you kind of build the confidence to do it. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun outside of trying to find a time to do it after the Wisconsin game, because there's some technical issues, and then some travel issues with the logistics with both of us, that we weren't able to record a post game pod. But and then the of course you draw a lot of critics too, and I am a habitual comment reader. I hate it. It's the worst thing about me is I can't help it. Like my wife will tell me,
just stay away.
Listen, totally correct. My wife's 100% right. She's been right this entire time, and I can't help it. I did manage to avoid a lot of things, Thursday and Friday. But yeah, it is one of the worst things about me is that I just cannot avoid, because part of it is like I want to get better, right? Like I'm trying to improve, and so I'm looking for. Now you're not always going to find real, rational criticism in those places, but sometimes you do, and sometimes you can find a way to kind of improve.
How does a podcast complement what you're doing? I mean, in general, like forget the comments on improving, but does it help you, whether it's talking things out and come up with an idea, or just being able to share some information you couldn't get in another venue? Like, what have you found as the benefits of doing it?
Yeah, it's helped me talk through my thoughts of that analysis stuff that I said that I really like to do. It is one, Audrey doesn't always agree with me, and that helps a lot too, right? Like she plays devil's advocate. I think she believes those things, but like the fact that she is disagreeing with me has pushed me forward, right? It's like then I have to explain myself, and that helps me then go explain it in my writing, right? Like you can't just say the thing, you have to believe the thing, and then those are two very different things. I think for some people, but for me, it's important that what I'm putting out there, any analysis I'm doing, that I believe it, and she makes me prove that I believe it. And I think that is really helpful, especially when I do so I do the order of operations, some of the inside baseball. Like I do my takeaway story right at the buzzer, and then I do a main bar right after that, where I'm focusing a lot of effort on the color of what happened and the big picture aspect of what happened. Then I do the podcast before I, watch all 22 and do the good, bad, ugly that I do. And it kind of, it's not a workshop necessarily, but it is sometimes where I workshop the things that I'm thinking or get the pushback against something that I was originally going to write about. And then Audrey says something that's like, oh, yeah, it's a good point. I didn't see it from that perspective. She will never get me off of team never punt. I will always be team never punt. But like it helps me work through those things, right? And then when I go to write good, bad, ugly, it is better because of the podcast. I really believe that. Like it has allowed me to kind of work through all of the thoughts that I'm having, and put it in a place where I can be concise and confident that what I'm putting out there is like I have worked through this, and now I am 100% certain that this is my observation of this situation.
Gotcha. Thanks.
No, and I've really enjoyed the podcast. It's become part of my weekly listens and routine listens now. That's just a little bit of bias, just because I also obviously like Audrey and enjoy her work as well. Um, you are a Penn Stater, even if you are a beat writer, so we gotta get you through these questions. Go to creamery ice cream flavor.
All right. I haven't had the creamery in, I want to say like 9 months. Smeel Birthday Bash was my favorite. I don't believe it's there anymore, or at least wasn't the last time I went, which was
I've heard of that one.
That was a renamed
it's
one from something. It's something else initially. It's
Okay.
still
Yeah.
theirs.
Okay.
Whatever.
it's basically cake.
Okay.
Just
All
like
right.
I love sweets. Like it's, shocker, I know, but that's always been the one for me. Even in college though, it was funny. I was never a massive creamery guy. I'm sure this will have everyone throw it with me once again, but like I loved Myers Dairy, and I always did, and I would always go out
We
to
had
Myers
somebody else
Dairy.
say that, and they didn't get beat up, so you'll
Yeah.
be all right.
Okay, good.
And
Yeah.
Well,
Steve,
listen, at this
And
point,
somebody
like,
else
I'm
defended the
calloused all of
lemonade.
it.
Somebody else said they didn't. The ice cream did the lemonade. So we've had a little bit of everything.
and I think Steve is secretly a Myers Dairy defender as well. So
Well, if he is, then he's correct.
No, yeah, they're okay, but they're not. The chocolate milk. Is still
Steve
pretty
loves
good.
his chocolate milk. Steve does love his
Yes.
chocolate milk.
Well,
You're the czar of Penn State sports. What's your one change that you're making for one day, and you only have one day to be that czar?
Well, if I can somehow get the funds, I'm replacing the Bryce Jordan Center. Just like
We're just tearing it down.
Yes.
Usually people are like, we're gonna go see them play at Rec Hall, and we're happy with that. No,
No, you gave me a day. I got power now. Like I'm running. Like this is no, I think Penn State men's basketball has had some like really awesome, and women's basketball's had some really awesome moments recently. And that cavernous arena takes away from a lot of it, right? Like the programs, I think they're actually building into being competitive consistently, and it just is. I don't know. It's just less fun in there for me. Like I've been to other arenas. Like when I covered Indiana basketball, like you go from covering games at Assembly Hall, this like incredible venue where you're like on top of the floor, to like I'm like I like my seat, to be clear. Like I like that I can see the whole court. It helps with some of that analysis stuff. But like if I'm a fan, I want nothing to do with being 50 rows up and you're like horizontally pushed back and just not enjoying yourself as much as some of those other places.
all right,
Sure.
that's a good one, and that is very fair. All right, even though you kind of live in town, you're back in town for one night and one night only. What bar are you walking into?
I think I'm probably pretty biased at this point because, as I call it, adult champs has been a go-to for a lot of the beat at times, right? Like the champs on Atherton. We'll go watch Monday Night Football there sometimes. We'll go, it's a nice place to hang out. And like I said, I love sports, so I'm gonna need those TVs. I need a lot of TVs.
That you have ruined Atherton Champs, and it is now formerly known as Adult Champs, and the only adult.
That's right.
it's great.
John, where can people find you, your stuff, your podcast? This is your moment to plug.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I should at this point. No,
No.
given some of the backlash. But no, you can find me at Twitter or on Twitter at John Sauber. I write over at centerdaily.com. The Nittany Dispatch is on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everything. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys.
Thanks, John.
3, 2, 1. I think obviously the main thing that we probably should talk about out of that interview, besides the fact that John was very gracious, very, very good with that interview, very thoughtful answers. I think the main thing is kind of the news of the week, or part of the news of last week. That's kind of now has at least a clean bow in the media storyline of it, at least, and that's the way James Franklin handled everything. I think. It kind of was fortuitous that it worked out this way, because I think John and Audrey and anybody that was going to ask those questions were right to ask those questions. I think we, as fans, like sometimes forget that the media is not there to be a mouthpiece. They are a third party in all of this. They are a neutral party in all of this. Steve and I tend to skew a little bit less away from the third party, because I'm a season ticket holder. Steve goes to games. Steve tailgates. We both tailgate. Like we're fans. But for those guys, they have a job to do, and I think that's really what they're doing. And I will say credit to James Franklin for getting up there and apologizing. It really was interesting to see him apologize, because I don't think he's done that a whole ton, but he does do it at the right moments. And I thought that was interesting. I think the whole situation, though, like, kind of back to what John said, and that's the reason that I was upset and bothered by it, was this is a man of power that has power in this state. He's probably, if not the highest paid state individual in the state, kind of sort of a state employee, right? Like, we want to hold these people accountable. And I think that was, when I saw him handle it that way, it was very surprising, just because he made a distraction out of something that probably could have been handled a lot cleaner, a lot better, and probably doesn't create the chaos that for John and Audrey and really the conversation that is now shifted in a wrong direction based on everything that's going on with that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the apology kind of ends it, which is good.
Yeah.
Also, let me step back. You booked John and asked him to do this long before that happened. So this isn't any case with John coming on the show this week saying, "Oh, give me some attention about this." Yeah. No, he actually stuck to his word and said he was going to join us even after, I'm sure his life wasn't fun this past week, and still came to talk. So kudos for that. And yeah, the media is right for asking. I mean, the coach, as I mentioned, we were talking to John, the coach recruits the players here, right? Like, they're the best thing since sliced bread, hashtag we are better today, or whatever it is on social media. So if you're doing that when they come, you've got to talk about them when things happen. It just is what it is. Lots of other tentacles there with, father of 2 daughters and stuff like that for the coach and all those things. But yeah, it became, did you watch the game back already yet?
I have not watched the game back yet. So that is,
it got mentioned in the first quarter. Like, Noah Eagle mentioned it, like did a read coming out of a commercial into the game. And I don't think that happens at all during the broadcast if the previous Tuesday goes a little differently, right? If it is, sorry, I can't talk, whatever else, it might just go away because it got elevated and became a headline. Not that it wasn't going to be a headline, but it became more of a headline. I think it ended up in the game more likely than it would have been. But I'm glad he came back and circled around. I don't think the media was wrong in what they did. I think the people that are beating up the media, the best one for me, there's somebody on social media who I'm sure doesn't listen, but if it gets to them, great, who is the wife of a longtime media member in Pittsburgh who was taking the media members to task for not supporting the team. And I'm like,
it's not their job.
Lady, you slept with a guy who's for 30 years, whose job it is to be a media member, and you're going to beat up the media? Like, that's kind of gutsy. Like, so, yeah.
I don't want to derail us too much, but I do think I think that this is we have lost this. Like everything has become, particularly with social media, and like it's not like me, I hate social media. I work in social media. It is my livelihood. It's how I make my income. It's how I run this podcast, right? Like I think,
and those two are not connected.
Not connected either. Yeah, absolutely not connected. But it's to me, it's we've blurred these lines over where the media is, and that is not necessarily that is power and that is control, and that is probably why James Franklin tried to have Greg Kincaid go read that quote as opposed to him, because he wanted to make it as clean as possible. So I think, I don't know. I think obviously that situation is not done and over with, and I think, I also think one other thing that a tentacle that's worth bringing up is James Franklin had a very similar situation to this at Vanderbilt that was just as unfortunate, or allegedly just as unfortunate, and I think it's frustrating to see that happen for somebody that you want to hold accountable as a fan, and that was why I was trying to be very conscientious about my word choice, because as a fan, more so than whatever we are, that bothered me the most. So I wanted to get to that. I thought that was interesting that John was like, I want to go chase down a writing career. I think that's kudos to him for figuring that out at that time in your life, because I wouldn't trade my journalism degree for the world, but I know of other people that got a degree in something that were I should have done something different, and for him to go chase that down and recognize that's awesome.
No, and kudos for the work to get it done in a couple semesters and get out and then go try something. Be smart enough to say, okay, I need reps. I'm going to go to grad school. Right. So I think it's really cool. The first time I had met him too, so I appreciate the answers and the time.
Yeah. So that's awesome. All right. Let's talk about the Wisconsin game, and then we'll get into the other.
How was it?
It was great. It was great. It was satisfying. I don't I'm not emotionally as high as I was after the USC win, but I feel so confident in this team now. And I know that's in the face of the fact that the 5-star quarterback is injured this week and is a game time decision or whatever, however James Franklin put that. But I think that's why I just kind of feel good right now. This team has done a lot to make me feel confident. I never felt like that game was out of hand. And I think some of that's their body of work this year, curing out some of those cobwebs that I wrote about, talked about. And I think the other thing that is impressive to me is there've been 7 games, and it's been a collective sum, where I feel like last year maybe it was just the defense, or other years it was just the offense, or I guess we can throw special teams in there. But yeah, I think USC, you can make a great opinion or argument that was a special teams win in some ways. I think that is what is unique and fun and maybe different about this team that I've enjoyed.
Yeah, they feel balanced. They feel, you get an injury on the defensive front, backup guy comes in and plays well, right? Backup quarterback comes in and plays well. There's some things that, the receiving core probably isn't still some big, huge threat, but they're winning games. And it doesn't feel like, my excuse is my thing will be, they're winning games, don't worry about it. And sometimes I'm just kind of saying that to say that, even though there's flaws to be seen. There's some nitpicky stuff, but they seem pretty good. I don't know if they're the second or third best team in the nation, but they seem pretty good.
No, I think it's very difficult to pinpoint, but I agree with that. They feel mature, I think, is the best way to, they didn't, even Julian Fleming, he has that terrible drop in that probably sets the tone a little bit differently in that game if he catches that ball on that third down, which led to a turnover on downs. Even him just coming back and playing in that game, being level-headed enough, I think those little things like that are adding up or showing up, and I think that's why it's you can sow some comfort into this team or reap some comfort from this team in the way that they're playing.
I agree.
Darian and Steve style. How was the TV broadcast?
It was a solid NBC broadcast. There were no CBS drone shots, no camera shots panning over the stadium. Todd's a voice I trust. Noah knows what he's doing. Catherine Tappan did what she was supposed to do with pregame interviews and the pregame interview and the coach, and a bunch of postgame interviews because the game ended early enough that I think she got 3 in postgame. They didn't miss it. They missed one thing, and it would have been piling on, and it's nitpicky. They missed Drew Aller going to the locker room. As he was going to the locker room, he stopped and turned around and talked to somebody in the crowd in an animated manner, like I think he saw a fire truck or two when he was talking to them. So I don't know what that was, and I feel like that's just something they didn't show us, that they kept a camera on to know. Like I don't know whether somebody popped off about his injury or said something smart about whatever. That was it. I mean, that's nitpicky, and you had to kind of be watching it because he was kind of like going through the back of the screen, and you could see him turn and kind of go back. And I'm like, oh, somebody said something there, and that's inconsequential to the game itself. So,
First off, what was the fire truck? Seeing fire trucks?
Yeah, F-bombs. Come on, that's fire truck. Oh,
I've never heard that one.
Sorry.
That's good.
G-rated,
I like that one.
Sorry.
We could. I don't know. I don't think we've dropped an F-bomb on this podcast yet. We'll keep it. We'll try.
Realistically, that's nitpicky because I thought the rest of it was good. I don't think they missed anything. I think they got a sense of the game. I think they were down the middle with both teams.
So let's put a pin in that. We'll turn the fire truck engines off because I want to come back to that because I do think that that's an important thing to talk about. I want to talk about you, and I want to talk about the interview you did with Catherine Tappan this week, and I thought that was a great interview. What was the most interesting thing you learned from your conversation with her?
I think the most interesting thing was...
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, yeah. I think preparation, which I guess I knew. I mean, it's just the amount of stuff they have that they don't get to use, right? And that was one of the things I kind of wanted to convey. I think it's a tough job. I think it's easy to judge sideline reporters and say the interview. The most interesting thing was the pause. When I asked the question of how does a viewer know if you did a good job? Realistically, they're watching the interviews and that's all they see of you. How do they know if you've done a good job, right? And there was this pause and she's like, yeah, they don't. She said, but you kind of have to not care about that, right? Like it's about helping the broadcast, helping the team get the information they can use, things they can't see, stuff like that. And knowing you're only going to get 5 minutes on a good game of actual on-air time. So I think that was the most interesting thing is how comfortable she was with that situation because she's so prepared to help the broadcast be better.
I'm not saying this because she tweeted out the article or posted the article on Instagram and I'm very thankful for that, but she's so much better in that spot, in that role than she was necessarily in the studio host when she was doing NBC stuff. And I think the preparation comes through. I love the line that you got from her about asking about the local hospitals and like, what's the nearest hospital? Right. Like I never would have thought of that, but for her to think of that, I think that just kind of shows the the nitty grittiness that they need to get into so that they are prepared should something goofy, interesting happen. But yeah,
I think it's that level. I think it's that level of experience because she's done it enough times.
Right.
That separates her from somebody else who might just be getting into the business, who's maybe, working a smaller network game or whatever else, right. And they're just there to ask questions. Well, you got to know the other stuff, right? And you got to be able to work. She talked about working both sidelines, right? She's going to be on Wisconsin side the first half because that's where the Fickle question was. But she's going to bounce around to both sidelines, try to see what's going on. Yeah, I just think it's that stuff that people don't give them credit for, myself included sometimes. Because the good ones make it look easy. And I think she's one of the better ones.
Yeah. No, I thought that was good. I enjoyed that article. Make sure you go read that on the blog. Thought that was a nice job from Steve. All right. Let's talk about the fire truck moment, as we're calling it. I saw the whole fire truck moment play out. And I think there's another little angle to that story that maybe wasn't talked about. And I think is fascinating. And... look, I have written about these very topic several times at this point, but I think it's interesting. So Steve's correct. The injury happens, I think, on that second down sack or maybe that first down sack. And Drew seemed upset with the official that the play wasn't blown dead sooner and maybe thought there should have been a penalty. He then kind of sails that ball. And then something else happens on third down. I can't exactly remember what. I might have had that order switched around or however been, and he's limping off the field. So he's limping off the field. There's like 20 seconds left or whatever time's left in the half. And that's when the trainer kind of grabs him and they pretty much almost immediately, they went to the tent, but they kind of sort of pretty much immediately just went straight to the locker room because Penn State wasn't getting the ball back before half there. So yes, it appeared that somebody said something to Drew, and that's what set him off. And as Steve put it, made him talk about fire trucks or whatever it may have been. However he phrased that. I love that phrase. I'm going to use it forever. So that happens, but who's standing there is Pat Kraft. And Kraft got very animated, upset. I don't want to say he was restrained, but there was somebody with him that was like, Pat, you need to settle down. You need to settle down. You could kind of see it play out. And then he pointed, he kind of got into it with one of the like, I don't think those security guards do anything. The like ones that wear the like the jackets that not even like have a badge or anything. I don't think they do anything. He goes to that person and like it very clearly was like that person said something or something like that. And then as their team's coming into the tunnel at half, he actually went to the police officer that's with James Franklin to say something about it. I just thought it was like, I think that's a great microcosm of Pat Kraft being more visible, even if that moment wasn't necessarily visible, of defending his players, defending his team. So I thought that was interesting. I wanted to bring that up because I didn't know, I didn't think TV showed that because I didn't even really see a lot of tweets about that.
No, you didn't see Pat Kraft. You didn't see Pat Kraft. You saw Drew kind of turn, go back, and then a couple of seconds later, and as he turned, I'm like, I hope the camera's staying with him on whatever this is, right?
Yeah.
Like, and just because that's what I would have done, and maybe they did with that camera shot, and it's in tape somewhere, but we didn't see it, and then we saw him jogging back, and I'm like, okay, somebody said something there that lit him up.
Yeah.
And the Pat Kraft stuff is good context. That's great.
Yeah. No, I thought that was interesting. I went to Madison for the second time, hoping that Madison, the first time, lived up in the second time, and it did. And it's still, I think it's still the best college town that I've been to, and that maybe includes State College. I really think it's a beautiful area.
Wait, did you just say it was
what?
better? No, just
I said
State College.
I plead the fifth. That's what I'll say. That's all I'll say. I just think Madison is just this cool town of quintessential college, of northern Midwestern college life that is I enjoy. Went to the zoo. First time I've gone to a zoo on game day. That was fun. Steve and
the pictures were great.
Podcast superfan Russ were kind of teasing me on it, but I had a great time, so that's all that matters. Also saw the actual Badgers, and I still stand by my thing that if Penn State is a leader in the community, they should be a leader in conservation efforts of mountain lions. So that's my pitch on this podcast. The game day presentation there was fine. They had some weird remixes, like really weird remixes of songs. Like they went from Sweet Caroline to like Apple Bottom Jeans, like as the same song, and I wouldn't put those two together. Yeah, I think I highly recommend going to Wisconsin to enjoy.
They have the third largest stadium and third largest scoreboard in Division I, apparently, I heard. Behind only Auburn and somebody else.
So that would be my only grumble about that situation. It's only at one end, and then they have like really tiny screens kind of down towards the end where Jalen Reed scored the pick six. Okay. So it was kind of hard to like, I don't know, as somebody that sits kind of almost underneath the scoreboard at Beaver Stadium, like I'm used to like looking up and having a pretty big picture right in front of my face. That's so fair. Concourse was a little cramped. That was the only other gripe that I would have. It was a little cramped, so it was not necessarily like when I say little cramped, I'm talking like, you know, the spaces, you know, the rings of Beaver Stadium, like in the two concourse rings. It's like half of one of those rings cramped.
Maybe the people in Madison are skinnier.
I don't think that is the case because I ate a lot of cheese and drank a lot of beer.
Okay, never mind.
So those usually are not good things for a diet. That's what I'm getting at. Okay. Anything else about that game?
No. Want to know, right? On to the next game.
I think that next game's a little big. I think it's a little important. I haven't decided how I feel about it yet.
It's less important than anyone ever, right?
It's so interesting because we have spent this entire year building up to this game. And now I don't want to say it doesn't matter because it does, but it doesn't. It like if Penn State loses this game and takes care of business where they should through the rest of the season afterward, they're still going to the playoff, and that's all I want out of this situation. And I'm going to be wrong because then Penn State's going to be at 11-1, and Steve's going to be right on his damn prediction. I'm not bitter about my wrong prediction. I'm just
yes, you're right. Because I think, our perception is right that they're in a position where they could drop this game and it doesn't affect them for the playoff. I mean, some other weird things could happen, I guess. But if this is the only one they drop, they're in good shape. Conversely, Ohio State loses this game. They're not. I mean, they might be the best 10-2 team in the country then, because both their losses are on the road to ranked teams, to top 5 teams on the road. So they would be good losses, but 2 losses isn't a place you want to be in the same conference with Oregon, and who knows what Indiana's still going to do, and Penn State.
And they still have to play Michigan, right? Like
Right.
and that's a wild card game. That's an absolute wild card game.
Yeah.
I tweeted that after like it does not matter if Penn State wins, and I think maybe the point isn't that Penn State doesn't matter if Penn State wins. It's more so the fact that Penn State has never come into this situation in the last I can't remember when years, maybe since under James Franklin for sure, that they need a win. They don't need a win in this situation, and all of the pressure is on Ohio State. All the pressure is on Ryan Day, because if Ryan Day loses this job, like. You think
loses this game.
Loses this game. Yeah, he may lose his job. Yeah. So I think that is what is one aspect that makes this game interesting. I'm excited for that to play out. I think there are 2 other aspects that are interesting.
I was going to say, if that's one, you must have some others. So let's hear them.
Let's go with the one I wrote about today first.
Okay.
I think if you've listened to this podcast, you know how Steve and I feel about the noon slot. Like, we don't mind the slot. Steve loves the slot because he's back at his house by like 3:30. He's drinking beer, walking Guinness. He's taking a shower. Like, he's happy. I don't love the noon slot because I come from Altoona and it's a little bit harder, and the travel logistics. And yes, I think the game should be played at night because it's a lot more fun. But it's not the end of the world, because Penn State is primely focused or primely showcased in the college football world when they play these big noon games. Ideally, that's the whole point of the Fox contract. However, 99.999, maybe 100% of you listening do not like big noon. You don't like it because of all of the reasons that I listed out today. And now is your actual chance to do something about it. And this is not me lobbying and saying that you should do it. And that's because we don't, to be blunt, I don't want to lose guests.
Someday we might get a Fox guest.
Yeah, we would like to get Fox guests down the line. I'm just saying, how many times do you get to do something as a fan? Like NIL is the first thing that we've really got to do besides going to games as a fan. This is something that you get to do, is go to game day instead of big noon. And I think Penn State fans, for as much bitching and moaning as they've done about big noon, like they need to take this shot. Like they need to take the shot and kind of not show up, because I think that performs the referendum of, yes, we'll take your TV money that you're giving us, Fox, but you're not really welcome here. We don't enjoy you coming here.
I will point to, I agree 100%.
Thank you.
But I will point to 2000 or 2003 Michigan State here in November, last home game. They go to Indiana and they win like late on the team that sucks. Might have been 2003. Awful year. They go to Indiana and win. The team by all rights. Nobody should be coming to a home game with the last game of the year. Crappy weather, Michigan State. And people still turn out. Like Penn State fans turn out. And Big Noon's going to be on the right side of the Jordan Center. There'll be people there. Not as many as maybe not as many as I'm envisioning, because maybe people can resist it. But yeah, I agree. Like forget about the noon slot and the money. Like they're disconnected to me. Noon slot, money, take the money, you tell them to play when they want to play it. And I understand that. But yeah, it can be kind of like, hey, we don't like your noon slot. We're not going to show up for your show. But the show itself is the weaker of the two. And they know that. And anybody in college football knows that. And anybody at Penn State knows that. In terms of the athletic department, they can't say it out loud, but they know that. And they're going to be bribing student clubs, which I know for a fact, to show up. They're going to be, they offered the 500 free cowboy hats to the first 500 people who showed up last time they were here.
Great.
They're going to be dishing out whatever they can to try to get some kind of crowd. And it would be poetic justice if nobody was there, because it's just not a good show. And if you're going to walk 50 more yards to go see Pat McAfee and Herbie and Ben the dog and whatever else, like, it's worth the steps.
Yeah. And I think that's what this boils down to. And I think the other thing here, and I tried to convey this with what I wrote, is like, college game day has become borderline Americana. Like it is a quintessential fabric to the fall of football, and like, or not the fall of football, football in the fall. And I think people appreciate that, and I think that's why even 20, 30 years from now, when Herbie's Corso's age, and I think people are still always gonna be want to be picked for the game day game. Always want to show up for the game day game. Always want to make a sign for game day. I think the funny thing that I was thinking about was those hats, though. Those hats I saw after the UCLA game, and I just like this. I was like, this is such a sad attempt at quite literally again stealing something that College Game Day has, which is the Home Depot hard hats. Those hats are like a status symbol because that shows that you went to game day early, you stood there at 3 a.m. and you got this hat, and now like you have one, and it's just a cool thing to have that I think is a good way
I
to
should have put mine on with the outfit. I wasn't thinking.
I have one. I have one in Altoona that I need to bring up here. I think it's in Altoona.
I just the cowboy hats is like, why a cowboy hat? Like, why would you ever at Penn State have a cowboy hat, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard anecdotally from about a half dozen kids stories about they're looking to pay our club to show up, or they were looking to like give us food to show up, or whatever else, right? Like,
Steve, you just got the bomb there. That's.
I mean, maybe not flat out paying, but like they were encouraging clubs to come and like giving them, right? Oh yes,
bribe. Okay.
Yes, no, they need it. And we talked about this at UCLA after the UCLA game. Like they can have a crowd. They can have a crowd if they know what to do with it, right? The crowd at Penn State wasn't as energetic as it could have been, but they got some energy behind giving Urban Meyer some heat, and you could hear them shut that down. Like the show wasn't playing into that because Urban didn't want to be that bad guy there, or they didn't want him to be. Let him be the bad guy here. This is the place. This place in Ann Arbor are the two places he should be the bad guy, right? Like it's okay. I am concerned about this for game day, and maybe you can tell me I'm wrong. I'm concerned about Penn State students and any kind of cheering ability with Pat McAfee, right? Because we got one cheer, we are, right?
Right.
Like, and he always in the past couple games, right, has been finding something. Like, I don't know what he's going to lead him in besides we are, right?
Here's what I think. I think McAfee's going to go total heel here. I think McAfee, because he's going to like play into the "you beat my football team" bit. And I think that's what's. I think he's picked the home team every game so far this year. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure he has. I think that's what's going to happen.
He's been the home team show everywhere else, so that would be interesting if he went off character.
I think he's a wrestling
Look, if the dude's going to try to give somebody $100,000, they're going to cheer for him no matter what, so it'll be fine.
True. That's true. Okay, second element.
Yep.
And there's a certain someone that might maybe come to town.
Oh, he's coming to town.
Well, he already came to town. It was on Saturday, and I think that makes this so fascinating for so many other reasons. We could almost do our own episode on it. We're not going to because it's not what you come to listen to us for per se.
I think they come for some reason. That's the best
no, part. I don't know. I think the Trump thing is so interesting on so many levels. I think one, who's the private citizen? Is the private citizen maybe on the board of trustees? Like, I think that's very interesting. And how does Penn State play this neutral game about Trump? And it's probably very hard for them to say no, because right now, even if he is the former president, he is a private citizen. And like, it's difficult to just put like if they say no, right? Or word gets out that they say no. Now Penn State sets themselves up to get kind of trolled or whatever by the right side of the aisle. And I think Penn State's always trying to be very neutral because of how diverse politically Pennsylvania is. That's why he's coming to this game. And I think even Beaver Stadium, like I was thinking about this, like if you made an electoral college out of Beaver Stadium, who would win? And I don't know. I think maybe democratically, like it would be the Democrats just because of the student vote being more students there, but I don't know. And I think that's one aspect that makes this interesting. The other aspect is the fan experience of, I've heard the Steelers situation when he was at the Steelers game was fine. It was normal. That's the NFL. They're used to handling bigger-ish celebrities, even if they don't necessarily have to work with the Secret Service every time Snoop Dogg comes in, right? But I've also heard the horror stories of the college football national championship when Trump showed up, or the Alabama-Georgia game this year when Trump showed up. What's that going to look like? And, like, how does Penn State resolve it and do all of that? I also think, like, I think there's a fascinating opportunity here where, like, how does James Franklin handle the situation? I don't think he was asked about it. And I'm surprised that he wasn't. Maybe it comes up on Wednesday when it's a little bit more casual. For the most part, Franklin has been apolitical. Like, he has not said anything. I think it's very interesting that, like, Donald Trump, in my mind, has been very racist towards black people, and James Franklin is a black head coach. And I think it's just very fascinating how he would handle that situation. Should they he wants to take a photo with them? Like, how are they?
No, I don't think that's happening. Like, I don't think he's on the field.
He's not going to take a photo, but what if he goes to the locker room, I guess?
I don't think so. Like, this isn't a Penn State visit. This is a private citizen visit just to say he's there. I don't think Penn State, I guess they could say no if they couldn't come up with the security. They can't see they keep him safe. But I think the private citizen thing gives the university the out, whether they want him there or not, or whoever it would be or not. The private citizen thing does it. Although I'm intrigued by the tickets. Look, if you want to bring me as a private citizen to the box, it's one ticket. If I get a +1, it's Susan. I'm not bringing the whole Secret Service with me. How do they all get in? Like, yeah. I think your attendance number may be in jeopardy this game finally. Although noon game, maybe not so much as a night game.
Right.
But more bodies, more media people in town covering it, more credentials for them to deal with people in the stadium. No, maybe I don't think James was asked about it overtly today. I know he wasn't asked about that way, but somebody asked him about other stuff that happens this week and what's going on, and he talked about staying focused on, maybe I'll worry about the condition of the turf and some other things, but I got this stuff to worry about, right. X's and O's and whatever else. And I think that's his answer if it comes up again. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the logistics, but not crazily, because they should be able to get him into the suites easily. Those are pretty much private in and out, shut off the edges, not worry about it. Dude doesn't come to the game if he doesn't want to be seen, right? Like, somebody's like, oh, those glasses or windows are tinted, you'll never see. No, those windows open up.
So,
right? So he'll be able to be seen if he wants to be seen.
But does Penn State show him?
No, not on the Jumbotron.
And that's what I don't get about this situation. Because I said this to you last week when we were hearing rumors of this. I said, I don't understand the point of him showing up. Like, that's what I don't get.
Well, it's Ohio and Pennsylvania. It's two states that matter in the election 3 days out from the election. He cares. He's a regular guy going to a football game. I mean, realistically.
Yes.
But Penn State's there's not anything Penn State's doing with him on the scoreboard or whatever else. It's a Fox game. I guess they could show him, right? Like, if you believe in Fox and Fox News are connected,
right?
You could believe that he's going to get some love there. There's not going to be any kind of interview. There's not going to be any kind of on-field stuff. I think it's more the logistic stuff. And I am, as someone who likes to avoid crowds, even when I'm with 100,000 people, the whole hurry up and get there early and get in, I'm not a fan of that messaging. Like, because now everybody's going to be clamoring in. And I don't know if I'm in love with that, because they could just trickle in as normal and be okay for a noon game.
Maybe that's why I'm bothered about it, is like, I'm trying to leave political Darian out of this, but it just feels another selfish thing that he's doing. And it's not about the people there, right? Oh, it's not about the people there. It's about him, and that's what bothers me.
Right. No, and if you wanted to, talk about stuff, you talk about, like, the visit this weekend and the wrestlers showing up with them and being in front of the smallest crowd they've ever been in front of in the BJC. Like, you wouldn't do that though, right? So I think there's a lot going on, but I don't think it's going to affect Joe and Jane, general fan, as much as we thought it would initially. It shouldn't. Like, if it does, I'd be disappointed with the bigger folks that make those operations happen, because I think you can keep his access and egress separate enough. It's not going to be a public event for people to see and meet and greet.
I don't know, Steve. I just don't know, because
there could be the stuff you don't expect. Like, I could see people walking around the stadium or near the stadium protesting his presence. Like, I could see that. That's the thing you can't predict, that I guess I would think about if I was in those roles to worry about stuff.
So my only thought there is, like, the main avenue that people walk down, quite literally one of two, is right next to the suite entrance. So that's gonna be a logistical nightmare, I think. And so I bet he comes in after the game, like after the game starts, or right close to 11:45 type thing. If he wants to get there on time, I don't think he was. I think that was why the Steelers thing was so smooth. He wasn't there when the game started, so that made things life easier.
Maybe be like a pro wrestling thing. He'll start under the ring and just pop out at some point. Maybe he'll be in the suite overnight.
I had a thought, and now I
Never mind. I'm going to stop bugging you.
Just
no,
I had a thought.
I think there are things that that are going to bug me about access and egress inside the stadium if it's a real pain in the rear end, because it shouldn't affect people on the west side or the student section. It just shouldn't. Like there's no possible way, because that road's shut down. Nobody's driving up it after a certain point, right?
Now I'm like strategering.
Yeah, because you're gate F, right? Like trying to go in there.
I might go around.
Yeah.
All right. You made me feel better about it. You said one thing I really enjoyed, so that's all that matters. That's all I got. That's all I wanted. Just to see more fans at a Siena Penn State basketball game.
Stop it! You're piling on.
All right. I'm sorry. Okay. We get everything out there. We feel good. How do you feel about Saturday? How do you feel about Penn State football playing a football game on Saturday, regardless of who the quarterback is?
That's the other thing. I can't tell you because it's gonna knock you off your chair.
But here's the other thing: we haven't even talked. like there's so much going on right now that we haven't even talked about the fact that the starting quarterback is injured, or maybe injured, and might not play, might play, and that's an intriguing part.
Right,
all right, knock me off my chair. Come on.
I would be not totally uncomfortable revising my season record.
Oh, please don't say that. Because you're
that's how I feel. I don't know that they're good. I mean, Ohio State's a very good team. They got injuries along the offensive line. They got issues. They got all the pressure. Even with Penn State, even if Drew Aller doesn't play, you have to feel good about how the
I did this to myself last year, though, and that's what I'm saying.
It's Halloween. It's like Charlie Brown time of the year. Like, get that football out and let's see what happens.
Okay. All right. That's we talked about everything there. I think we've covered every aspect. We have not done Old Guy, Young Guy. We're going to do Old Guy, Young Guy. It's Halloween related, though.
Okay.
It dawned on me. I don't know if I know this answer. Old Guy, Young Guy this week is, what is Steve afraid of? Like, what, like, spiders, things, what's like, no thank you. Like,
snakes and heights.
Snakes and heights?
Yeah, man, especially if it was snakes on a plane.
Don't you do the over the edge thing? Oh, you haven't done the over the edge thing.
No, I haven't. I mean, I can do that. Like, I can do heights thing. Like if I'm in some safe thing, like if it's a ropes course or you're hiking somewhere or whatever else. But if you're hiking along the side of the mountain and you've got like this much, like I'm not a big fan of that, like to walk on. And snakes in general. Even if you tell me it's a safe snake, I don't care.
Really? Because like I'm thinking about your property, and you have to have a lot of snakes on that one or two. No,
I've seen like two. I've seen like two in the 6 or 7 years, and that's two more than I need to see. We have, since my niece doesn't listen to this show, and I'm sure her parents don't either this late in the show, we went to a birthday party for her kids down by the Monongahela River at their house, which is right on the river, 2 years ago, and 2 snakes in 2 hours. Not ready to go back anytime soon. Like, let's have the family gathering at our house. Like, sorry, I'm done.
That's very surprising.
Like sliding down a tree in the middle of the birthday party, like, climbing out of the
You're
lawn.
a central PA boy. Like, that snakes are a part of life.
They are indeed, but they can stay
you don't
away
like
from me.
Okay.
Oh, right. Well, you're in love with snakes. Those aren't your fears.
They are not my fears. The one that still bothers me is clowns. Clowns are awful. They're just.
I was thinking about getting a clown mask for Halloween to hand out candy too.
The Jaffa Shrine Circus is the worst place on earth for me. That's all I'll say. Like they used to bring a clown. They used to bring the clowns like around circus time for like a promo bit to schools, and it was like I'm skipping that assembly and going to the bathroom the whole time. Like because even now did you sit in the stall with your feet up so nobody could find you in the stall?
Yes,
basically. And like even now, like kids will roll up on Halloween, ask for candy, and they'll have these weird, creepy clown masks on, and it's like I don't like that. I don't care if you're a 5-year-old that I can probably take with one arm. No, thank you. So
nobody's making a wish at Darian's house. Oh, yeah. Good Lord! Not in a clown mask, anyway.
No. So if you're coming to my house for Halloween, do not wear a clown mask. That's all I ask. Okay. Yeah, heights don't really bother me. I
don't mind if I'm not at the edge. Like we went up to the Space Needle at Seattle like years ago.
Yeah.
Susan's like, "This is great." I'm like, Is it really? Is it cool? Like I'm like back here, like, is it cool?
Really?
That's great.
Wow.
How do I know if those railings are secure? So what if they've been there for years?
That's fair. That's fair. All right. The dogs are barking, so it means it's time to get out of here. I think we hit on everything. We will have a game preview. We will have something probably from Steve. Are you down to do a newsletter this week?
Yep.
Okay. We will also have a newsletter confirmed. Game day 90s game day tees are on sale for 20% off. That is because this is the first ranked matchup between the top 5 teams at Beaver Stadium since 1999. Other thing. We've eclipsed the 4-year mark. This was our 5th season talking about Penn State football, but we've eclipsed the 4-year mark, and we have officially had our best month ever on the blog. So thank you to everybody that's read. We really appreciate that. So yeah, that's about it. Emails, website. It's called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called With
Steve.
We've got let's see, we've got a podcast, 5 stars, thumbs up, etc. We really appreciate that. Subscribe. Also appreciate that. We've got emails. Mine's Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
And lastly, we've got Twitter handles. Mine's at stuffsummersays. Steve's is
at Steve Samsel.
Oh, I know the other thing I was going to say. This will be the last time we talk to you, probably before Election Day. Please go vote. Please make a plan to vote. That's all we'll say about that.
Cool.
Perfect.